5:11 p.m. on July 15th. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Commissioners Gershenson,
Here.
Gingell, Hoffman,
Hi. Oh, hello. The doctors ordered you to have some fluid.
Oh, one second. All right, people are muted. All right, if you're not talking, please mute.
hearing
Thank you.
conversations that sound like HIPAA violations. Okay. Jackson,
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Same thing.
Here.
Kokendorfer,
Here.
Kowal,
Here.
Kuhn,
Here.
Long,
Here.
Lubes,
Here.
Markham. Here. McGilvray,
Here.
Middleton,
Here.
Miller,
Here.
Nelson,
Here.
Powell, Quarles,
Here.
Fizz,
Here.
I thought I saw you. Okay, Taub,
Here.
Weipert,
Here.
Woodward,
Here.
Zach.
Here.
Okay, you have a quorum.
Excellent. That will move us on to the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. The invocation is going to be delivered by the Honorable Commissioner Christine Long. So, Commissioner
Okay.
Long, the floor is yours.
All right, let us pray. We are thankful for this day that you have given us, for its blessings, its opportunities, its challenges. May we appreciate and use each day that comes to us. We pray for strength and guidance for each day as it comes, for each day's duties, for each day's problems. May we be challenged to give our best always, and may we be assured of your presence with us. Amen. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance now.
Amen. Okay, and there's a flag behind Clerk
Yes.
Brown.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Long, for that invocation and leading us through the pledge. They'll bring us to the approval of the minutes from the June 25th meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Moved by Commissioner Powell, seconded by, the screen's moved, Commissioner Zach. Any discussion on the minutes? And music soundtrack on the music, that works too. Seeing no discussion, all in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Let the record reflect that the minutes are approved unanimously. That moves us on to approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda? And moved by Commissioner Lube, seconded by Commissioner Jackson. And the agenda is going to be as follows, because I think there was like a little bit of a technical glitch here. So there were some items that on the consent agenda. So the agenda will be as follows. The main purpose of today's meeting is going to be the budget presentation from County Executive Dave Coulter, as well as members of the executive team. We have 3 items on the agenda that we definitely need to take up because of some time sensitivity, to get applications out, and most importantly, to prepare for the August primary. Those would be the 3 items that were taken up in the pandemic committee that a majority of this board serves on. 2 of them were under the consent agenda on the agenda earlier that dealt with the 2 issues that arise out of the senior task force. The 3rd one is an extra $50 incentive pay for all, a hazard pay for all election workers across the county. And we need to make sure that we can get this approved so that our clerks can advertise it to help recruit workers that they desperately need for the primary. So we'll make those items A, B, and C, but they will all be on the regular agenda. There will be no items on the consent agenda. So The motion by Commissioner Lube, seconded by Commissioner, okay, well, I'm gonna redo it again because like people have showed up in their cameras. So Commissioner Wypert, seconded by Commissioner Quarles, will adopt the agenda to allow for the 3 items that were approved with recommendation from the Pandemic Committee on Monday. Those will be on the regular agenda. I think there'll be a few, maybe there might maybe a couple of amendments, and then all the other stuff. There are a lot of meetings that there'll be a lot of some local government grants that will just be suspending the rules to take up the funding of. We'll take up those at the end of the meeting. So with that, any discussion on that? Commissioner Spitz?
Yeah, just a quick question. Is there going to be an updated agenda and packet posted?
Yes.
So the
Yes.
so the third one, everybody can see. I'm aware of what it was, but I'm not sure everybody in the board is.
Yes. Yeah. No, I believe staff is working on that right now, so to be updated.
Great, thank you.
Yep. And so we'll have a presentation that will go a little while, so there'll be plenty of time. And I'll reiterate this once the presentation about the budget happens.
A new agenda has been posted, but it still has the first 2 under the consent agenda, but the 3rd item is now on there under the regular agenda.
Okay.
If you refer
All right.
online.
So if you see the new one, yeah. So those 2 items that are on the consent agenda, the motion to approve the agenda will move both of those items to the regular agenda, not the consent agenda. So items A, B, and item C are all going to be under the regular agenda of the new updated agenda if you refresh your agenda.
Dave,
Commissioner Powell. Yes.
in the meantime, I was wondering, I don't know what's protocol, but I was trying to see if I could be marked here now that I'm here. I don't know if, or just moving forward.
You are here. You are here.
Okay,
Madam
thank you.
Clerk, notice that you're here. Yes. You're here, and we'll be taking some votes a little bit later that will also record that. Thank you. Okay. Any further discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, all in favor of adopting the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Let the record reflect that the agenda is adopted unanimously. And that will bring us on to communications. Is there, Madam Clerk, are there any communications?
Yes. Shoot. Sorry. Yes. Sorry. Yes, I have one. Just one. Okay, that's just one. Okay. Dated July 15, 2020 to the Oakland County Board of Commissioners. Ladies and gentlemen, please accept this letter as notification that under the provisions of the board rules, I've created the School Touchless Water Bottle Filling Station Ad Hoc Committee. The purpose of the committee is to facilitate the development and execution of a plan to distribute touchless water bottle filling stations to Oakland County schools. I'm appointing the following members to the ad hoc committee: Commissioner William Miller, chairperson; Commissioner Kristen Nelson, vice chair; Commissioner Philip Wypert. In addition to the $300,000 the board has previously set aside in designated fund balance for this purpose pursuant to miscellaneous resolution 19306 and miscellaneous resolution 19411, I recommend that an additional matching amount be authorized from the CARES Act Coronavirus Relief Fund grant. The authorization of up to $600,000 in program funding combined with Oakland County's bulk purchasing power would be a sound investment in a proven program. Together, we can demonstrate our commitment to providing our students and faculty with access to healthy drinking water while enacting safety precautions that protect against the spread of COVID-19. Sincerely, David T. Woodward, Chairman, Oakland County Board of Commissioners.
Is that it?
I think so. I was checking my
I
drawer.
know, you turned around, it looked like you were like throwing it in the garbage.
No, I was looking in my drawer to make sure I hadn't put one in there. I think that's it.
Okay. Okay. Good. All right. All in favor of receiving the communications to form the task force as congruent to the task force that was formed a year ago to move the ones for K to middle school. This will allow us to move forward with the older ages and high school students across the country. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed say nay. Let the record reflect that the communications are received unanimously. Okay. that brings us on to the presentation, and like the main purpose of today's special meeting is to really kick off the process that is probably our number one most important responsibility, and that is the review and approval of a annual appropriation for next year's fiscal year, as well as the adoption of a 3-year annual budget. And so without any further ado, I want to hand this over to County Executive Dave Coulter. On July 1st, we received our received transmission of the budget recommendation that the Executive Coulter and his executive team presented to the board and the county. And we will begin the process over the summer of budget hearings and so forth. This is an opportunity to give an overview of what is all contained in that. And the Finance Committee will do a more in-depth review about the overall summary, as well as the individual department budget hearings. As we prepare for this, I'm going to ask before I hand it over to Executive Coulter to give his presentation and his executive team, I'm going to ask everyone to mute your mic. Oops, I just muted myself. Mute your mics and mute your cameras to minimize ban use. So that we can make sure that we can see the presentation, and then when the presentation is over, we will. I'm going to ask for. If the board will. Consider 30 minutes, up to 30 minutes of Q&A if there's questions to individual team members and the executive before we move on to the rest of the items that we have to discuss. So Commissioner Wiper has the recommended fiscal budget on the camera, so that's perfect. It's like I have to put you on cue. So if you can mute your cameras, mute your mics. At this time, I will like to recognize our Oakland County Executive, Dave Coulter, to present the budget for the next 3 years, as well as a recommendation of the appropriations for the upcoming fiscal year. Without any further ado, Executive Dave Coulter.
Parents and our parents, our brothers and our sisters, our sons and daughters, co-workers, spouses and loved ones. And the pain of this is also felt by the families they leave behind and the communities that they enriched. It's a global crisis and a very personal one too. Commissioners, the video highlights how together we are confronting a combined health and economic emergency. I'm grateful for your support from the early days of the pandemic. We may not have always agreed on every specific, but we have shared information and kept and are keeping the lines of communication open and working collaboratively. I know that you share my determination not to go backwards to the days when the virus overran our healthcare system and our best defense was isolation. Our efforts suppressed the virus, and now it's up to us to manage a highly contagious virus and keep our economy open. I'm here today to present the fiscal year 2021-2023 triennial budget recommendation. I regret that we could not be together in person. I wanted to be here in the Board of Commissioners auditorium for a couple of reasons. First, as many of you have heard me say in the past, my years on the Board of Commissioners really did shape my approach to public service. When I served as a member of the Finance Committee, I learned the value of our budgeting practices. I took them with me to the city of Ferndale. And when I returned as county executive last year, a unanimous vote on the 3-year balanced budget was a high priority for me. Second, as the first county commissioner to serve as a county executive, I fully understand the important role of the Board of Commissioners. This is the beginning of a collaborative process. On behalf of myself and my entire executive team, we look forward to taking your questions this evening and engaging with you during the budget hearings to again achieve budget approval by the Board of Commissioners. I start with 5 main budgeting goals. Number 1, deliver a 3-year balanced budget. Number 2, end the practice of using fund balance for operating expenses. Number 3, maintain our AAA bond rating. Number 4, invest in initiatives that tackle our challenges and moves our county forward. And number 5, take steps towards an outcome-based budget. This 3-year balanced budget presented to you today stands at $900,531,197 for fiscal year 21. The budget presented to you today no longer projects the use of fund balance to balance our fiscal year 2021 operational budget. There's more work to come to further reduce and eliminate the use of fund balance beyond 2021. When we went to our rating agency meetings in February, our presentation included this slide. It illustrates the projected use of fund balance, not for investment, but for operations. And while our actuals did not often follow the projections, as illustrated by the fiscal year 2019 spike, it is important to reduce the differential between the two going forward so that they track more accurately. I appreciate that Board Chair Dave Woodward, Finance Chair Helene Zach, and Commissioner Mike Spiz traveled to Chicago with me and my team in February to help maintain the county's AAA bond rating. So when we started our budget meetings in April, we used this slide to guide our discussions. And this slide to highlight our commitment to living within our means. As a result, this slide shows the flattening of the use of fund balance. This permits us to have a conversation about the appropriate use of fund balance, which stood at the end of the last fiscal year at nearly $260 million, or approximately 54.6% of our fiscal year 2020 general fund budget. When it comes to utilizing the fund balance, I believe we should be guided by these principles. First, something that advances the protection of the safety and health of our workforce and/or our residents. Next, promote the stabilization, recovery, and growth of Oakland County's economy. And finally, drive operational efficiencies with a one-time spend in technology or workforce improvement. We've also kept a watchful eye on the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on our budget, working with the Board of Commissioners to be fiscally prudent in the face of all this uncertainty. At the same time, we've taken steps to ensure that county employees understand that they're appreciated, and that during the pandemic, we provided hazard pay to those employees who were required to be on site or working long hours under difficult circumstances. This was the right thing to do, and others in the state followed our lead. We also took steps to keep people connected to work through rotating teams and administrative leave, as well as reassignment opportunities. At no time did we cut employee pay. With the courts starting to come back on site, those on temporary furlough will return to work with their health care and benefits intact. This budget illustrates that Oakland County is in a strong fiscal position to weather the current COVID-19 crisis, as we have past fiscal crises, and to demonstrate the county's continuing commitment to maintain a strong fiscal position in the future. Part of our strength is our workforce. Attracting and retaining a talented workforce is a top priority for my administration. As one of the largest employers within the county, it's critical for us as an organization to stay competitive and a preferred employer of choice in our region. As the board well knows, plans to consider the compensation study in March were placed on hold because of the COVID-19 pandemic. It's critical that we get our salaries aligned with market rates. We look forward to working with you to consider these recommendations and funding to implement this study in the fall. Given the uncertainty at the time of our budget submission surrounding the state revenue sharing decisions and COVID-19, we will be recommending through the budget hearing process an amendment to provide one-time equity adjustments to our employees. This is also the time for us to demonstrate our commitment to addressing the challenges we face as a county. My budget priorities build on the Oakland Together agenda presented in the 2020 State of the County in the following areas. First, expanding and protecting healthcare. With the support of the Board of Commissioners, we are now implementing a transformation of county health services through Oakland Health 360. This unique partnership with Honor Community Health brings primary care, dental care, family planning, and behavioral health care into our county clinics. The first phase of our expansion begins August 10th. The additional partnership with Oakland Livingston Human Service Agency will deliver the critical wraparound services, including access to insurance coverage, Head Start, and emergency services like energy, food, and housing assistance. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we are following a community-based healthcare delivery model, bringing healthcare and COVID-19 testing directly to areas that are underserved. We will partner with an independent third party to evaluate all services delivered through the health division to ensure equity and access to quality healthcare for our residents. Protecting our environment. It is our solemn responsibility to protect our environment for future generations, and that starts by addressing climate change. The threat of the overheating climate has real consequences for our lakes and rivers, our infrastructure, agriculture, and public health. What is most important to me is that we have an actionable plan with evaluation tools and measurements to accompany our goal. This budget devotes staff resources to a sustainability effort within our planning division. I look forward to working with the Board of Commissioners to conduct a comprehensive energy audit, an assessment of greenhouse gas emissions and sources across our county facilities. We will focus on developing a plan to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2030, utilizing renewable energy and increasing energy efficiency. We'll also create a sustainability fund to assist local governments in their sustainability goals and establishing a county-wide leadership team on bold strategies to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050 for our county. Creating a new economic development strategic plan. Oakland County's 2018 GDP was $112 billion, representing 23% of the state of Michigan's total GDP. Oakland County's ecosystem is critical for the success of our county, our region, and the state of Michigan. It's imperative that Oakland County continue to drive the economy, and we will release this month a comprehensive, integrated, and strategic 10-year plan. Increasing workforce opportunities. The talent and professionalism of our staff in 6 Oakland County, Michigan work centers were on full display during this pandemic as they transition to assisting county residents delayed in receiving unemployment insurance benefits. At the same time, we have added financial coaching, and they have delivered summer youth career programming, virtual career training, and workforce support to our businesses. I'm grateful to the board for approving a resolution a few weeks ago to provide $1 million to the Workforce Development Board so they could provide overtime for essential staff and update technology strained by the overwhelming need for these services. This budget devotes a staff person to the Workforce Development Division to implement our Oakland 80 initiative. Working with education and workforce leaders last winter, we agreed to a goal of having 80% of our Oakland County adults with a post-secondary degree or credential by 2030. This ambitious goal requires collaborative and intentional leadership from the county. Establishing a public safety fund. We also have a responsibility to support the public safety of our whole community and build consensus within Oakland County to showcase best practices and reforms of our criminal justice system. I look forward to working with the Board of Commissioners and the Sheriff to establish a public safety fund that supports and encourages our local communities in their ongoing efforts to maintain and increase high policing standards. This fund will support training and equipment to further the goal of the best outcomes for all. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. The Oakland Together agenda holds at its core the values of diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is not just one person's responsibility or a county initiative or a program, but rather the foundation upon which all of our efforts are built. Working with the Board of Commissioners, we established the county's first Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer last year, and Robin Carter Cooper is now part of our senior leadership team. We've also made permanent in this budget the position devoted to implementing Commissioner William Miller's resolution to make Oakland County a welcoming county for immigrants and refugees. In the coming months, we will undertake an internal effort to engage employees in cultural awareness, evaluate program delivery, and create hiring and contracting metrics upon which our efforts are evaluated and judged. The fiscal year 2021 to 2023 triennial budget recommendation starts with the solid foundation, an enviable fiscal position, and the determination to leverage our strengths to tackle our challenges. Sean Carlson, our Deputy Executive over Management and Budget, is now going to dig into some of the details that may be of interest to you.
Thank you, County Executive Coulter. As he said, I'm going to dive into some details here, but first let me start with the budget calendar. We kicked off the budget calendar for the triennial budget on April 21st when County Executive Coulter addressed the pandemic committee in regards to the preliminary revenue estimates and laid out the budget approach for this administration. You can see a series of dates. I'd like to also draw your attention to the budget overview sessions that we had on April 23rd and 24th. April Lynch, Deputy County Executive, and also Lynn Sonkus from Fiscal Services. We had individual departmental meetings with each of the departments as well as the elected offices outlining what this coming budget would be. We also discussed May 8th through the 15th. We met individually with each department via phone, given COVID-19 at the time, and discussed the budget. On July 1st, we delivered a recommended budget to the Board of Commissioners as outlined in Act 139, Section 45.558, Section 8.1 that talks about the county executive providing next year's budget 90 days before the succeeding fiscal year. During the budget orientation, this was the following agenda items that we discussed: COVID-19 impact on the current FY 2020 budget. We also went over the Coulter's administration's budget approach that was outlined by County Executive Coulter just previously. Also, we talked about the preliminary revenue estimates, expenditure discussions for FY 2021 budget, and performance metrics. In the Coulter administration, the budget approach that we continued to share with the budget during the budget orientation process was continuing to use the triennial budget along with the process of the budget monitoring, forecasting, and amending. Also, we discussed ending the practice of utilizing fund equity to balance the operational budget. No more structural budget deficits. Revenues need to equal expenditures. We also had discussions about establishing key performance indicators that will measure departmental performance. Also, we provided guidance on utilizing the fund equity balance. This slide represents that with a budget of over $900 million and 3,500 employees, that we begin to establish a culture of accountability through the development of performance metrics and dashboard for each county executive department. There's a lot of great work that is being done in this county. This is one way for us to capture the work being done by great public servants. We envision each unit, division, and department having 4 to 5 metrics that measure their government service. The performance metrics should answer the 3 questions outlined in this slide. How much did we do? How well did we do it? And most importantly, is anyone better off? The 4 to 5 metrics would be what we call key performance indicators. The metrics will assist in prioritization of requests made by elected offices and departments. The metrics will also help to drive a culture of accountability and operational efficiency. That was our budget orientation discussion. We also had budget meetings, and we had collaborative discussions with the departments. Each department we met, not as a group as a whole, but we met individually and spent at least an hour or so with each department, reviewing past 3-year expenditure trends regarding personnel expenditures, operating expenditures, and internal service expenditures. We also reviewed the number of general fund, general purpose positions, a discussion on employee compensation and next steps, departmental needs based on COVID-19 pandemic, and also looked at and discussed departmental initiatives and elected offices initiatives. The budget document that you received last week of fiscal year 2021 through fiscal year 2023 Budget and General Appropriations Act is referred to as the line item book. Next week, prior to the budget hearings, you'll also receive categorical analysis and budget highlights, explanations of variances from one year to the next year by budget category. Common explanations, salary adjustments, fringe benefit rate adjustments, IT development, maintenance department charges are just some of the items that will be outlined and explained. Before we get into the 3-year budget, I think it's just important to make sure that we give the basis of this budget. The general fund, general purpose is normal government operating funds. It's primarily supported by taxes, charges for services, intergovernmental revenue, and transfers. It's the highest level of discretion. Proprietary funds operate like a business, must charge costs to customers and avoid general fund subsidy. 2 types of proprietary funds are the enterprise funds and the internal service funds. Special revenue, primarily grant funds, lowest level of discretion, used for a specific purpose. Impact on general fund, general purpose, only if there is a match, a grant match that is required. You can see by budget by fund type that the FY 2021 County Executive recommended budget is $454.8 million. This slide shows budget by fund type. When we look at the general fund, general purpose under the FY 2021 County Executive recommended budget, we can see that $454.8 million comes from our general fund, general purpose. Special revenue accounts for $76.9 million, and proprietary represents $368.7, giving us a total of a $900.5 million budget that is being presented for this year. We can see the outlines of the expenditures as well. The general fund, general purpose being 454.8, special revenue 76.9, and proprietary 368.7. As we can see, the GFGP over the next 3 years is projected to be over $450 million in each of the years. Also, this graph shows us that proprietary funds make up slightly over $350 million, and that we see special revenue slightly over $50 million in each of the years. The general fund, general purpose revenue by source, which is this slide, I want to draw your attention to 3 specific categories. Number 1 is taxes. The taxes for FY 2021 under the county executive recommended budget represents $251.1 million, which represents 55.2% of the GFGP revenue. Charges for services are $120.5 million, and other intergovernmental revenues represent $45.9 million. This slide shows that we can see that taxes, specifically property taxes, is the primary source of revenue for the general fund, general purpose budget. And you can see in each of those years that is hovering around $250 million. Charges for services is a distant second. I want to dig in on revenue just a little bit more. Property taxes represents 55.2% of the FY 21 revenue. 76% of the total property tax base is residential. The average sale price from a home in 2020 was $290,000, 4.1% increase from the previous year. Charges for services represents 28.5% of our revenue when looking at GFGP, and intergovernmental revenues represent 14.7%. Federal and state grants represent 4.6% of this revenue, and other intergovernmental revenue is 10.10. This chart highlights the charges for services as it relates to the functional areas: law enforcement, administration of justice, and the general government, specifically as it relates to fine and cost, private fees, and government fees. The GFGP revenues charges for services after property taxes, the largest source of support for county GFGP is charges for services, approximately 120.5 million. 57.6% of the fees are charged to other governmental units, law enforcement contracts, and equalization services. 28.3% are fees charged to individuals and businesses, such as business licenses, birth certificates, vaccinations. And then courts, fines, and costs represent 14.1% when we look at charges for services. When we're looking at the general fund, general purpose revenues as it relates to intergovernmental, we can see that that is approximately 66.9 million of the FY 2021 budget. Revenue sharing making up 27.3 million. I want to just draw your attention to the revenue sharing because this will be something that we are monitoring closely, and will not know what Lansing is going to do in regards to the revenue sharing. This is a statutory revenue sharing. This is how much we received last year. We are expecting this to be reduced.
Completely shut my
subsidy is 14.6 million. Convention facility tax revenue 9.6. We expect that to go down as well, given that we had a couple of months where the economy was shut down. State court equity revenue is 4.5 million. Local community stabilization share is 2.25 million. And reimbursement for judge compensation is 2 million. And now I want to turn your attention to the general fund, general purposes expenditures by category, looking at total personnel expenditures, operating expenditures, and internal service expenditures. This is a graph that highlights, and you can see that it gives us a graphical understanding that the county government services by civil servants for Oakland County citizens. You can see that we are in the service industry here by this graph. But what I'd like to do now is turn things over to Deputy County April Lynch to share some more details on the expenditure categories.
Thanks, Sean. I really appreciate the opportunity to be part of this budget process for Oakland County for this next triennial budget. A couple things that I want to talk about in general is some reminders of the fact that 65% of our general fund expenditures is personnel. So therefore, a lot of time and thought has to be put into how we're going to navigate the next 3 to 5 years as it relates to those costs that we have. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. You'll notice in the budget right now that we currently reflect a 1% salary increase for fiscal year 22 through 25. As it relates to this this next fiscal year 21, we are taking some time as it relates to the COVID issues and the potential revenue losses that we might have for the county. So one of the things that we're monitoring right now is state shared revenue, as well as a bigger piece of that, not only on the COVID side of that, but is pre-COVID, we were really working on the compensation study. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in just a second, but that is also a big piece that we're focusing on these next few months in conjunction with watching our revenues. We're hoping that we can bring a formal recommendation for fiscal year 21 toward the end of fall. County Executive Dave Coulter had mentioned possibly the idea of an equity adjustment. Those types of things will all be worked through as we take a look at, again, our revenue and the comprehensive compensation study. So as it relates to the compensation study, as you know, prior to COVID, we were really looking at what this could look like and how we were going to handle the study that was done. It's actually started in 2018. One of the things that we did as COVID hit, as well as we started looking into budget, a lot of factors started to come at us on how we were going to navigate the cost of that. First and foremost, we have to make sure that our structural deficit is addressed in this next 3 to 5 year plan. That's going to be key for us to start a new foundation as it relates to the costs of our personnel. The second thing that we need to take a look at is that we started looking at, again, pre-COVID and pre-budget, was that one of the things that was budgeted was the general increases for mayor employees. that were non-union, but we also need to take a look at the union wages as well. So when we started taking a look at that, that added costs. And then the third component is that we never really talked about benefits. And as I started doing those presentations to our employees, we talked about not looking at benefits at this time. But the more we started diving deeper into compensation and benefits, they are both part and parcel, and they need to be talked about together. So I currently have a benefit survey that is out right now for all of the resources that we use for our compensation study to take a look at some options there as well. So our goal is we want to bring a 5-year comprehensive personnel plan to the board that takes not only into consideration compensation, but also takes into consideration benefits. And we'll have to take a look at that in a different way. And one of the things that COVID has really showed us is a different way of doing business. Sean had talked a little bit more about KPIs and outcome-based budgeting. I think that's going to be a huge factor in the overall personnel plan that we bring forward. So we're going to be taking a look at efficiencies and how we can work through, are we doing business differently? And the business that we're doing differently now because of COVID, can that continue? Does that make sense to service our customers and service our residents? Right now we have a hiring freeze. We're maintaining that. We're taking a look at those. We're asking a lot more detailed questions to the staff that's coming forward and asking for personnel to be hired. We're taking a look at that case by case and having a better understanding of how that works within our operations. We also need to know too that we have 900 employees scheduled, or they are actually not scheduled, but are prepared to retire over the next 5 years. Just out of those 900, 600 are eligible right now. So we want to take a look at all of those opportunities and options as it relates to the combination of operational efficiencies, some cost savings potentially through benefits, and kind of look at a bigger plan moving forward that also ends with one of the things that COVID has taught us is that the different way of doing business is online, it's remote. Do we have a smaller footprint? And can that work as it relates to putting all of these together? So we really need to take a look at all of that. Sean and I are working through that right now with our teams to just try to understand and be able to bring that comprehensive plan as it relates to staffing levels over the next 5 years. I think all of those combined, we can come back with a much better, more comprehensive plan. As you know, many years, I think we put in a 1% budget increase for salaries. That's just not sustainable. As we start to look at trying to maintain market rates and things of that nature, we just need a more robust plan. So more will be coming in the fall regarding that. Moving on a little bit more to operational expenses. Right now, $88 million represents about 19% of our expenditures in general operating in the general fund. The big portion of that is our contracted services at $45 million. Sean and I worked with many of our departments to kind of reduce that if we could to try to balance the budget and continue to take a look at monitoring our contracted services. Non-departmental is about $12.8 million, and commodities serve the last $8.5 million of the original $88 million for the operating expenses. It's also important to note during the budget presentations and budget work, or the time that we spent with our teams on the budget, was the policy regarding professional service contracts that are greater than $250,000. So we really focused in making sure that they were aware and understood and had a handle on all of their contractors as it relates to that as well. Internal service funds is also another piece that needs to be addressed as it relates to balancing the budget. And we worked really hard with our teams to talk about and talk through some changes there as well. The impact on general fund is based primarily on rates. And so different internal services charge different rates to the general fund. Risk management, water resource commission, facilities, information technology, and motor pool are the biggest factors in those internal service funds. The big hit, or the big change that we made this year, was we looked at the rates for FMNO, and we were able to readjust those to bring on cost savings as well to the budget this year. And we will continue to monitor and take a look throughout the year of are there ways that we can reduce those internal service funds. I think sometimes they can be missed when we can make a lot of changes in there as well. So we'll be taking a lot of time this year as well as focusing on making sure that we have the right rates to maintain those service funds. Last but not least, another major impact to our general fund is our capital improvement. I think that we've talked, there's considerable amount of time and effort that's been put into capital improvement plans. One of the things that we want to do is really take a look at that with a lens of 10 years. I know that we have a master plan right now, but it's time to revisit that with a couple of things in mind. One of the things that we really want to take a look at, as Executive Coulter had mentioned previously, is does the capital improvement plan take into consideration some of our environmental priorities and making sure that we have a sustainable campus, but then also taking a look at all of the different divisions and all the different departments that have those needs, and we need to take a look at prioritizing them. You have a third component to that as well, is that again, COVID has showed us that we can do things differently. We know that the courts are really looking at, what does this look like for them moving forward? We're looking at, we have 600 to 800 people who are currently redeployed, working remotely. What does that look like to our footprint? Can we shrink that in any way? All those factors need to come into our capital improvement plan. We'll be taking a look at that over the next year as well, and really, really focusing on a 10-year prioritized comprehensive capital improvement plan. I think at this point, I'm going to turn it back to Sean, and he'll take it from here. Thank you.
Thank you, April. So just staying with GFGP revenues here and expenditures, just looking one last look here from a by function perspective. When we look at law enforcement, and law enforcement is made up of not only the sheriff's department, but also the prosecuting attorney. That is the biggest cost expenditure area at $188.2 million. The county executive is at $133.8 million. And then we have the administration of justice, which is our circuit courts, our district courts, and our probate courts at $75.3 million. And then we have general government, which is made up of the clerk's office, the register of deeds, a water resource commissioner, and also the treasurer's department, which is at $31 million. This pie chart gives a graphical perspective of just the percentage of those dollars that I just laid out to you. So you can see law enforcement is at 41% of the GFGP expenditures for FY 2021. The county executive is at 29%. The courts are at 17%, and general government is at 7%. I'm now going to shift the focus just a little bit to get back to what County Executive Coulter talked about in his opening comments about maintaining and retaining a AAA rating. And I just want to take a step back and as a reminder of why this is so important. And the AAA rating not only helps reduce the cost of government for our taxpayers, but it also, the bond rating provides an independent and objective assessment of the county's financial condition. And it gives us a report card. The AAA rating is the highest rating available, and it generates more interest from investors when the debt is issued and provides the lowest interest rates available during a competitive bond sale. Focusing on and retaining the AAA rating helps to drive fiscal discipline. Our framework in the Coulter administration for retaining a AAA rating is the factors outlined here: fiscal plan, the economy, debt level, fiscal management, and liquidity. I want to take a few moments to talk about the fiscal plan. The 5-year fiscal plan that we provided here on June 16th, 2020, I want to draw your attention first and foremost to the adopted 2021 budget. I have two circles there. The first one is the planned use of equity. Now, there's been a lot of discussion, and we are ending the planned use of equity for operational. You can see that that was $30.4 million in the fiscal plan. You could see through operating revenue and operating expenses adjustments that we've been able to do some cuts, as well as look for other areas for revenue that produce $30.8 million, therefore eliminating the planned use of equity in 2021. When we look at the 2022, we can see that it has been significantly reduced when you compare it to the previous 5-year and the adopted budget, but we still have some work to do on this budget. 28.3 million is what we're looking at in regards to planned use of equity, and we've been able to make adjustments in the revenue and the expenditures to produce 20.9 million. So there's more work to be done in FY22 to fully eliminate the operational use of fund equity. When we go to year three, 2023, you can see that we have not completely eliminated it, but significantly reduced it. Just about 2 million, a little under $2 million difference between the planned use of equity and the adjustments that we've made in revenues and expenditures. So we will remain diligent on reducing the planned use of equity for operational expenses and eliminating structural deficits. The other number I want to draw your attention to is the $219.4 million. And that is the amount of money that we received from the U.S. Department of Treasury for COVID-19. So we have recorded that under the fiscal year 2020, under the revenues and adjustments. You can also see that we have a counter ledger in the operating expenditures adjustments for the same dollar amount. But I do want to point out that this is a very fluid situation right now, and that it is more likely than not that some of the expenditures will appear in Q1 of fiscal year 2021 as well. The other number I want to point out to you is after the 5-year fiscal plan that we put together, the Coulter administration at the end of this is expecting to have a rainy day fund of $197.6 million, which is $104 million that was provided in last year's fiscal plan. This graph outlines the conversation that we had with the rating agencies, that it was not our intention to spend on operating expenses anymore, and to purposely make adjustments and have a more moderate line that's going out in the future years. So you can see this as it's illustrated. So again, we're introducing the 5-year fiscal plan starting in FY 2021 through FY 2025. All that being said, I think we need to make sure that we continue to be cognizant of budget risks that could impact the fund balance. It's important to note that court cases and agency rulings can also reduce the fund balance. And no matter how small the amount, as in the case of the IRS self-disclosure, or how big the potential cost is, such as the Raffaelli case estimated to be at 30 million, we need to be prepared to cover these expenses. These cases not only represent impacts to our fund balance, most importantly, they represent actions that we also need to be mindful of and take steps to become more accountable and be good fiduciaries of the tax dollars sent to the county by our residents. The next 3 items lays out debt level, liquidity, and fiscal management. These 3 factors are the items that the county has the most control over. Oakland County's AAA rating is largely based on being outstanding in these particular 3 areas. When we talk about debt, the maximum amount of bonded debt allowed by law is 10% of the state equalized value, $8.1 billion for 2020. In 2018, it was $7.2 billion. As of May 2nd, 2020, just a little over 2 months ago, the total outstanding debt for the county was $591.5 million, 7.3% of the permissible level. Outstanding debt has been decreased by $23.4 million since the fiscal year end of 2019. The authorized limit for bonding has increased by $1 billion since fiscal year end 2018. A quick summary on long-term debt. The single largest outstanding debt obligation is for water, sewer, and drainage district projects, $317 million. The second largest outstanding debt obligation as of April 1st, 2019 is $209.1 million for retiree healthcare bonds. It's important for us to have strong liquidity and diversification. This pie chart outlines our operating investment portfolio, and it gives you an idea of the certificates of deposit, which represents 38.5% of our holdings there, $561.5 million. You can see our passport checking accounts, U.S. government securities, negotiable CDs, and government investment pool, showing that we have a very strong operating investment portfolio. I also want to discuss the economy. The economy is that last factor that is important for us to round out the framework for retaining a AAA rating. Having a robust economy, an economy that is growing, that's looking forward and into the future is very important. When we were at the rating agencies, we presented this slide showing Oakland County's ranking on indicators of prosperity. This slide represented counties of like sizes across the country that were evaluated on educational attainment, child poverty, medium family income, high income age 65 and over, managerial professionals, and the sum of rankings and the rank of the total sum. We can see that we were ranked 8th in educational attainment, child poverty, we were ranked 6th, medium family income 5. These were some of the high ratings that we received. And our overall ranking was 6th amongst these counties. Fairfax, Virginia was 1, Montgomery, Maryland was 2, Collin County, Texas, Nassau, New York, DuPage, Illinois, and Oakland County, Michigan were the top 6 in that ranking. Our economic development highlights and some of the things that we talk about a lot. You heard County Executive Coulter talk about the GDP in Oakland, 112 billion, which was 23% of the state's total, and higher than 15 other states. Our exports in 2018 were $15.9 billion in goods exported from Oakland County. This was 27% of the state's total exports and more than what was exported in 25 states and the District of Columbia. Personal income, which is another measurement of economic development. In 2018, there was $91.6 billion in total personal income earned by Oakland County residents. This represented 19% of all of Michigan's personal income and was more than the total personal income of 14 states and the District of Columbia. Employment, another factor and indicator. In 2018, there were more people working in Oakland County than in 13 states. And 17% of Michigan's employment was right here in Oakland County. Wages, in 2018, $46.4 billion in wages were earned in Oakland County. This is higher than the total wages in 15 states and equals 20% of all the wages earned in Michigan. We have a lot to be proud of in Oakland County, and we have a strong foundation on which to build on. This next chart, and I would be remiss if I didn't talk about what our economy looks like now, given COVID-19. And it's important, this is a slide that was done by the University of Michigan Research Seminar in Quantitative Economics, which outlines payroll, employment, and future projections. And we can see the dip and the projections to climb back out of this. So COVID-19 not only hit Oakland County bad, it hit Michigan, the Midwest, the US, and globally. How we respond, the decisions we make, it makes a difference to how well we recover and how fast we rebound. It also affords us a unique opportunity to accelerate and lead. This can be done, but only with a plan. Fortunately for Oakland County, Executive Coulter was in the process of building a long-term strategic plan preceding COVID-19 pandemic. We've been working and assembled a group of folks and stakeholders starting in January and February. We interacted with these stakeholders. We got feedback on diversifying our economy, promoting regional partnerships, job growth, deep prosperity, and being competitive as a region, as a nation, being competitive regionally, nationally, and globally. The other thing that we've recently added to this, though, is providing financial assistance to support our small businesses trying to recover from COVID-19. This is an important element of the plan that wasn't previously built in but has been since added. And it's important for how we survive, but also how we thrive going forward with the economic development plan. So as you can see, this focus is a framework, and each component is critical to maintaining a county government that is fiscally disciplined. Maintaining a fiscal discipline will go a long way in retaining our AAA rating. So in summary, I want to just highlight some of the things that you heard here today. We have delivered a 3-year balanced budget. We are ending the practice of using a fund balance for operating expenses. We have a plan to go forward to retain a AAA bond rating. We will invest in initiatives that move our county forward with Oakland Together, and we will establish metrics and track performance to ensure that accountability is in place. Thank you for your time.
I want to thank the entire Oakland County Executive Dave Coulter and the entire administration team. If people can turn their cameras on, and we will continue the meeting. We're going to open up we'll open up to 30 minutes in Q&A for those who might have it. If you are not speaking, if you can mute yourself, that'll be better for everybody. So let me just give like 30 more seconds for people to turn their cameras back on. Okay. Well, don't let it ever be said that we can't have a $900 million budget presentation done in a remote space, because we just did it. And I want to commend Executive Coulter and his entire team for doing so. Executive Coulter, if you like to open up for the Q&A, give you a couple remarks, and then we'll open up the Q&A for any commissioners as we begin the process for the board deliberating further on this collaborative process that we call the annual appropriations and 3-year budgeting process.
Well, Dave, thank you. I guess you've heard from us. I hope that you have half the pride that I do in the people that are helping to navigate our county from a fiscal and budgetary standpoint. I've gotten to work with these folks every day, side by side, and it's a very dedicated and talented group of people. I'm sorry we couldn't be there with you in person, but just know that Sean and April, as well as Lynn and Dave Heber and Bob Klein are on this call. So we're here to answer any questions that you might have about what was presented. But thanks for the opportunity to do this, even if it was remotely, and hopefully next year we'll be able to do this in person.
Thank you, Executive Coulter. I've got teed up Commissioner Gershenson, followed by Commissioner Spiz. Commissioner Gershenson.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to also commend Sean for taking hold of this budget and what changes you've made in a year. Some of the highlights that really stood out for me was, of course, no more use of fund balance. And for you to set up a dashboard so that you're accountable, it's going to be transparent, is so admirable. And I look forward to following this as my first year on finance. The fact that you eliminated the structural deficit in 2021 was pretty impressive, and reducing it in 2022 by 8 million and determined to keep moving that down was very impressive. And then the fact that in 2025, your projected fund balance would be 197 million, as opposed to previous, it would have been 93 million. So all in all, I'm really been enjoying sinking my teeth into this new budget process, and I'm really impressed with Executive Coulter and your team, and I look forward to the budget hearing. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Commissioner. And let me just say, well, first of all, let me back up and say I should have thanked our IT folks as well. I mean, they do an amazing job. You already knew that, but I need to call them out as well. But secondly, in terms of eliminating that structural deficit over the long term, it is going to require all of us to be disciplined. It's easy to let those expenses creep up, and there will be sacrifices required to keep our belt tight as it is now going forward. So, the shift in philosophy and not using that fund balance for operating expenses, I believe, and our management and budget people believe, is the right philosophy. But do know that it will require us working together and continuing to be diligent about sticking to these budgets and making sure that we don't get extravagant. So I appreciate your comment.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Gersten, Executive Coulter. Next up, I got Commissioner Spiz. Raise your hand, other commissioners, if you have any questions, and I'll put you in the queue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dave, I want to thank you and your team for putting this together. My question is relatively simple because the detailed questions I'll ask in the budget reviews. Anyway, I can get an electronic copy of this presentation shipped to me so I can take a closer look at it.
Sure.
It helped me versus looking through the 5,000 pages of the thicker book.
Yeah, no. I'm saying yes without looking at any staff, but yes.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And by the way, Mike, thank you.
Next, yeah.
Being in Chicago with us and help, you've seen these presentations quite a bit now, but your credibility there was very helpful. So appreciate your work in Chicago way back in February, which seems like a lifetime ago now.
No problem. Doing whatever we can do to keep this county moving forward, I would do.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking me along.
Right. Thank you. I think Commissioner Long had her hand up. Commissioner Long?
Thank you, County Executive Coulter. I just had, in the beginning of your presentation, you mentioned a one-time equity adjustment for employees. Will that be happening soon? And then are you guys doing are you going to do a little study? Will it be before the compensation study that they get this adjustment?
I think I know the correct answer, but April is on this call and I don't, especially in terms of the timing, she would be better to answer. So April, do you mind just jumping on and talking a little bit about the equity adjustment in relation to the comp study?
So one of the things that we're still looking for, as you saw in my part of the presentation, was obviously COVID derailed all of the original plans I had in bringing that forward. And now we're looking at a different holistic view, really taking a look at, I have a benefit survey out right now with all of our local communities in Southeast Michigan, as well as looking at the private sector for that and taking a look at that, as well as one of the big factors that we're working for right now is we did put in a 1% for 22, 23, and 24, is that we really need to really wait and see and look at what's happening with our revenue sharing and other revenue areas of concern due to COVID. So how we see this playing out is during this time, over the next couple of months, I'm going to be taking a look at the benefit survey, other options. We're also looking at, we have a hiring freeze that we're asking a lot more questions now. Talk to us a little bit more how long this position has been there. Are there any, efficiencies that we could use, that we could invest in now moving forward to allow for less employees later? All of those questions are being asked as hiring freeze. It's not just a hiring freeze without questions. It's important to know as well that we have almost over 900 employees are eligible to retire in the next 5 years, so 600 are eligible this year. So we're just taking these opportunities in these hiring freezes to look at operational efficiencies, the benefit study, all of that combined with taking a look into our revenue is and how we see this happening is toward the end of fall. We know more as it relates to all of that. We can make that adjustment either part and parcel with bringing a formal request regarding the compensation study to the board, or what we call like a one-time adjustment rather than a compounding raise. Maybe there's a 1 or 2%. That would be as a one-time, so we didn't have it compounding if we're worried more about the revenue stream. So I would see that more late fall. That was a long answer to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any further question? Chairwoman of our Finance Committee, Commissioner Helene Zach.
Well, I want to commend you on your budget presentation. I thought it was just excellent. And I look forward to reading budget hearings to look at it more closely in the presentation that we're going to have next week. One of the things that concerns me, and I got to watch the fiscal dollars, I think, Sean, you're probably the best person to answer this. We have a $30 million risk factor on this lawsuit. Raffelli, can you give us a quick overview so that we all understand what's going on with that?
Well, I'll ask potentially Lynn to jump in here as well, but I think that there was an expectation that that court case was going to be decided in May or June. There's that has been delayed. Hopefully, we'll know that soon. But legal cost, and I think we've set some money aside in the fund equity for this. But it's $30 million for this court case. I think you're all aware that this has to do with the forfeiture of a house back in 2014 for $8.41, and we find ourselves in a legal case now on that. But my point in that is that as we're laying out the fund balance, is that there's an understanding there that there are potential impacts that could impact our fund balance, and that's why it's important to have a rainy day as well. But not only to have a rainy day, but we also have a responsibility as government officials to understand these situations whenever they approach whatever department that they happen in, and what do we need to do to make sure we shore that up as well, and that we don't have those issues in the future, because that exposes us to some risks. So Lynn, is there anything else that you want to add on that?
I would just say that it's part of a assigned fund balance. It is not in a line item appropriation. And that's not factored into the fiscal plan at this point. That's why you're making it a point to say, here's some potential impact that could happen.
Right. And Commissioner Zach went to that point, and just I think most commissioners are aware this board has passed a resolution. I believe that Commissioner Hoffman was the sponsor of the resolution in support of a state law that said no government can foreclose on a property, or if a property is foreclosed upon and then there's equity, that equity should go to the individual owner. And I think that this board has, I believe it passed unanimously, said yes, it should go, any equity of a property should go to the owner. And unfortunately, the practice was that this particular property in Oakland County was foreclosed on for $8.41, and potentially puts us on the hook for $30 million because there was equity in the county. Well, the decision was like the equity did not go to the homeowner. So I don't know if Commissioner Hoffman has anything in addition. I believe I've characterized that correctly, but this board has supported statutory change in support of statutory change to that. Unfortunately, this action happened, and there is a risk of liability that we as a board have to handle.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Are there any other questions as it relates to the budget presentation? I got Commissioner Wiper followed by Commissioner Taub. Commissioner Wiper.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One, a comment and then two questions. So the first just comment is in our previous budgets, there's always been planned use of fund balance, and the Standard & Poor's and the other rating agencies, they never had a problem with it. We always use less of planned use. So just so previous administrations have always had AAA bond rating, and there was never an issue with planned use of fund balance. So that was just a comment. Questions, I know Dave Heber's on the line, and I've asked this before. We are factoring in the property values of Oakland County. I know there's probably an adjustment because of the COVID. And then the second question goes to April. She made a comment as to the courts. And with the new Zoom courts and less personnel, is there going to be, and I know personnel is our biggest cost, is there going to be a restructuring of personnel for courts? Because some of that can't fully be done remotely. For example, I picked up my budget book yesterday, and I'll tell you, we're 4 months into this COVID. And when I went over to the county parking lot at the 1200 building, there were only 11 cars in the entire public parking spot of the courts. And so I know things are different. So the two questions are, did Dave Huber, and I know he did, what's the adjustment on property values, SCV? And then two, what is April's comment on personnel for courts? Thank you.
All right. To answer your question, for fiscal year 2021, April 2019, we were projecting a taxable value increase of 4.25%. April of 2020, we revised that with the management budget team that Sean quarterbacked with Bob Klein, Mitch Bean, myself, Lynn Sankis. And we moved that down to an increase of 1.8% for taxable value 2021. We made reductions, another reduction for 2022. And then we are hopeful and still monitoring by 2023 that we'll be past this COVID. But this, to be honest with you, this is the most challenging forecast that we've had to do when real estate was shut down. So real estate transfers were not occurring to have the uncapping for taxable value. Building was shut down for builders and for even homeowners just making simple improvements to their homes and new construction. So we did throttle that back. I'm fairly confident for the 2021, our 1.8% we will be on with that. We are seeing market activity in real estate transfers currently. While it's less than the numbers of transfers that we saw in prior years, the values themselves are holding, and we continue to monitor this on a monthly basis, just like we have been in the prior years that I've been responsible for this. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. And I noticed out say our way, I mean, out in the west south part of the county, things are still selling and the interest rates are low and it doesn't seem to have affected any value. So
I would agree on the value portion of it. Just the number of property transfers is down. We measure that on a monthly basis, and I can provide some of that detail as we go forward in the budget hearings if you'd like.
I appreciate it. So just want to make sure the county is anticipating that COVID did affect the SEV. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, and obviously the residential, as Sean said, is 76% of our tax base. There are concerns in the commercial industrial, the income producing properties, hotels, movie theaters, restaurants that have been affected by this. The state did extend the tax tribunal filing deadline to August 31st. So we do not have a handle on our exposure to tax tribunals at this time. But, we're aware of that. We're monitoring it, and we'll work with the local assessors and obviously we'll make recommendations to the county executive and his team going forward. And as always, we'll report to the board at any time they'd like.
Thank you very much. And then the follow-up, the other question was for April about the comment on the courts. And I know personnel is our biggest cost in the county budget. And there was a comment about courts and reshaping and number of employees and changing Zoom court. So how is that going to be affected?
Sure. So I think that was one example of many. I think we have found through COVID multiple different ways to provide services. And so now that we're clearly going to have more time to even fine tune that, I believe that not only in courts, but in other departments that we're going to find some different ways of providing services that are efficient and helpful and still supportive of our constituents. And so we're going to be monitoring that for this next couple months and see, what are we doing different? How can we do it in a different big one right now. They are still doing mostly by Zoom. They're going to start trial courts. From what we understand, they're going to start piloting trial courts in beginning of August, mid-August. But that again is going to be dependent on the caseload or the cases of COVID. So I think, but in the meantime, though, I think that they are finding there is some benefit to having those Zoom opportunities for some, depending on what type of court proceedings that need to take place. So they're just one example of many. I think many of our departments are really looking at how we do things and what that looks like. And we saw a significant increase in the amount of people using going online to get their services, dropping things off in drop boxes. Just a lot of different things that we're really monitoring and taking a look at over the next couple of months. And obviously, we're going to still have more time to do that. What we thought was a short-term issue, obviously, is still moving forward as we speak. So we have some more time to take a look at some more operational efficiencies. And it's not just with COVID; it's with other operational efficiencies throughout the county and how we do things and what kind of investment can we make in technology or other process or another process that might make it easier to do with less than fewer people.
So I want to put even a finer point on that, if I may, and just add that because Commissioner Weipert, that's a great question. And the courts have been the most impacted because so much of their work is literally not happening right now. The few employees that we have on furlough are mostly related to the court. But going forward, COVID has really sort of revealed a lot of ways that operations could change. The county wasn't particularly open to work at home or different kinds of flex schedules in the past. I'm not being critical. I'm just saying it's just not how we operated. But we're going to find managers and directors coming to us and saying, you know what, this worked well, and there could be potential savings to us operating differently. And so I just want to say that because I think it's possible and maybe even likely that we'll come to you with some of these other kinds of arrangements that we're seeing industry and businesses adopting now that were sort of revealed in COVID that just made good business sense anyway. So I would say stay on the lookout and, for other ways that we may explore doing work for our residents in a more cost-effective and convenient way.
Thank you. So today I did a State Bar of Michigan survey on how is the practice of law and with the courts affected by COVID. And the questions were, are the Zoom courts working? Is remote law office working? I'm a lawyer. And, my responses were Zoom court is working. And, the technology's some issues, but that's a little bit of a learning curve. And, as far as justice, we want people to be satisfied with justice and served by justice. And if it can be done remotely and done properly, it may work. So I do appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Weipert. Next question or comments, Commissioner Taub.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. County Executive, for the presentation. I appreciate it. I would like to make a request, much like Commissioner Spiz, if you'd be so kind as to send your presentation out to all of us, it would be very helpful, because some of it, sadly, I didn't get sound, sometimes I didn't get pictures, so it would be helpful to have it, physically have the presentation, if that's okay with you. Yeah. One of the concerns I have, and I think we need to kind of look at budgeting for, are some of the expenses that people are having to expend in their own homes when they work at home. Things like paper and ink and printers and mailing, those kinds of things. So I hope you will get an accurate count from your departments, from the people who are working at home, who I don't want them to have to spend their funding, if that makes sense, on stuff like that. I think it would be important. It's important for us to reimburse them on all those items that they are spending funds on. I know many of them got iPads or laptops or whatever, but there's more expenses to things, and particularly in the courts when I think your prosecuting attorneys and such had to draft documents and, physical documents, copy them, send them in. So I think it's a good idea to check on that. Now, I had a couple of questions. You know that Commissioner Woodward will love this when I say shift and shaft. We did not vote for that. However, the upshot of it is that we don't get our taxes from this year until next year. Let's just kind of put it bluntly. My concern are the number of businesses who are failing sadly because of COVID now, the number of vacancies in office buildings, and the number of homes that sadly miss house payments and what have you. And my concern is that do you have some way to continue county government, some funds that I'm missing? Because you're spending fund balance, I get it. And I understand it's a new way to do it. But what happens if you only get in 60% of your revenue next year? Not this year, next year.
Right. Well, certainly that's not the forecast, Commissioner, but just to reiterate, we're not spending fund balance, we're preserving fund balance. So, and that's entirely why we're preserving it. So instead of spending fund balance down on operational expenses, we'll be preserving fund balance so that we can navigate and anticipate any unexpected costs that we might have. So I think that's our, the general philosophy of why we want to preserve that fund balance, which will require, and you're going to hear from employees who say, why are we being asked to tighten our belt when we have all this fund balance and haven't spent it down? It's because fund balance, philosophically, I would say, shouldn't be used for operational expenses. It should be used for maybe one-time expenditures like our workday software and those sort of things, but not for your routine everyday expenses like that paper and pens and things that you talked about. So that's kind of our philosophy going forward.
Okay, I have one other quick question about the hiring freeze, if I may. Are you doing replacements though in the hiring, even though there's a hiring freeze? In other words, if you don't have somebody to do the job, what are you going to be doing?
Yeah. So the hiring freeze excludes sort of critical positions. And April, I might not be saying that right, but if there's a position that needs to, is a critical function that needs to be replaced, those are being replaced. April, I probably butchered the way we said that. There's
I got it though. I understand it. It's not fancy. It's clear.
It's not, yeah. But we will replace critical employees, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Everybody's not critical. Thank you.
Are there any more questions? Commissioner Markham?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's not so much questions as it is a set of comments. First of all, I appreciate that this budget is geared with strategic planning in mind, looking out this year, next year, 3 years, but even 5 and 10 years forward in our thinking. And I think the dashboards will be really important for us to understand where we're spending money, where we need to be spending money. I think the dashboards are a great idea. It will also provide more transparency across the board for employees, department managers, commissioners, the public. I believe in making information available, and I think it's a really great step. I also think this philosophy gives us the flexibility to move toward the goals that are spelled out, especially, for example, the sustainability goals. We want to do the sustainability goals because we know they're the right things to do. We want to save the planet, but also long-term, they are economically advantageous to the county for us to do that. We're going to save money long-term by having a sustainable campus and operation. And so I think it fits very well with this budget. There are a couple of areas as we talk about adjustments going forward. One other area we might want to think about is in the area of public safety. It's our biggest budget component. And one example that came to mind through COVID was we worked really hard to reduce our jail population and say who really needs to be in jail because they're dangerous, and who else can we deal with in other ways to protect society, protect them, but also maybe move them forward into, services that they need. So I'd like us to take a longer view of that and say, as part of what are we looking at differently? And I think we've all realized that we need better Wi-Fi across the county if we're going to do these kinds of things. So I would like us to be thinking long-term about broadband. I know everybody else has said it, but where does it fit? Don't need an answer tonight. Basically, my strategy as a public official is that we take in the taxpayer dollars, and it's our job to give quality services and good financial stewardship for that. And I actually think the way we're going to go about this in the future does a really good job of doing that and gives the public the knowledge that their tax dollars are being spent effectively and we're not wasting their money. So that was a little bit long-winded, but as we were moving through that, that's what came to mind. And I'm very pleased by what we've seen so far. And I'm looking forward to digging into the details through the budget hearings. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Commissioner. And on your first point, I just want to say very briefly about the metrics in the dashboard. Measuring our productivity, because we're not just going to measure financial numbers, but we're going to have metrics around productivity and whether we're hitting our goals. And I think that's important for me to be able to evaluate how my departments are working. But I hope that you do, as a commissioner, see this as a tool so that you can understand, sometimes, you know what the investment is made because you approve the budget. And then you just kind of have to take, anecdotal evidence of how well those things are working. But hopefully this will make your jobs easier and the decisions that you make around budgets in the future more data driven, and then ultimately give the public confidence that we're providing services at an optimal level for the least cost. So I appreciate you mentioning that, and I just wanted to point out that it's a tool that I'm looking forward to using, but I hope the commissioners find that of value and the public does as well, because we'll make it available to everybody.
Thank you, Executive. Thank you, Commissioner Markham. Any further questions? Commissioner Jackson, followed by Commissioner Hoffman. Commissioner Jackson.
Thank you. I also want to just compliment our county exec and our executive staff on that presentation. It was very thorough and comprehensive. I just have a quick question about the CIP, the capital improvement plan, going for 10 years versus 5. And in the midst of us trying to really look at opening contracting and talking about contracting and wanting to get more minority, female, and veteran contractors at the table, is it also going to change the schedule for our construction managers? We hire construction managers every 3 years with the 5-year plan. So will we be made known how that 10-year plan is going to change those cycles? Because it seems like it would. It seems like it almost would create less of an opportunity because of the length of the plan. So could anybody speak to that for me?
Sean, you want to?
Yeah, I'll just jump in there. April can jump in and talk about the CIP plan in a little bit more detail. But I will say, from a procurement perspective, just because we have a 10-year plan, or whether we had a 5-year plan or a 15-year plan, it doesn't mean that we have to set up the contracting managers for every 3 years. That's how it's currently done. So we can adapt and roll with that as well. The key is that we've got qualified contractors, and that we're opening up the government's opportunity for other businesses to get involved. So what I would stress is that just because we might have a 10-year plan, it doesn't mean that we would be locking down contractors for 5 or 10 years. So there would be an opportunity for that. But April, I don't know if you want to add anything else.
I think that's part of what we will take a look at as well. I think the bigger issue is just, when we start having conversations about CIP, then it becomes, well, what about this project and what about that project? We just want to take a re-look at what the needs are, the actual, maintenance needs, as well as what we know to be true. Also taking into consideration, again, with COVID, we found maybe that we could possibly have a smaller footprint as well. So I think, again, going back to what Sean said, I think that there's a lot of opportunities here, not only to look at the CIP differently, but we can still also at the same time take a look at how we use contractors and what role they play, and just really take a stronger look at how we plan for those big, large, expensive projects.
All right, thank you.
Right. Thank you, everybody. Commissioner Hoffman, I have on deck next.
Thank you, Chair.
Followed by Commissioner Whiteford. Commissioner Hoffman.
Thank you, Chairman Woodward. Thank you, County Executive Dave Coulter, to you and your staff for the fine presentation. The question I have is for Dave Heber, and I've mentioned this many times before. There are many overassessments of property in Oakland County, and I was recently at a public hearing with the Senate Finance Committee in Novi, and people got to speak, and one of the senators, it wasn't Senator Runstead, but one of them posed a question to Dave Heber, and he asked him, okay, Mr. Heber, let's assume a house is listed for $200,000. It's advertised fairly in the marketplace. It's been in the market for a certain period of time. It's an arm's length transaction, and the house sells for $180,000. And the senator said, isn't that the market price then, Mr. Heber? And isn't that what you lower the taxes from 200,000 to 180? And Dave Heber said, no, that's the artificial price. Now, I bought a lot of property in my day, and I bought horses and I bought motorcycles. The market sets the price. So Dave, could you explain to me what artificial price is?
No, I can't, because I didn't use that term. I don't even know what artificial price is, but I can explain to you the process. And we've been over this many times over the years. Commissioner Hoffman and I have been, and the assessors in the state of Michigan are charged with valuing all properties each year. And the way that the assessors are required to do that through the State Tax Commission, which is an agency through Treasury that issue bulletins that give advice on the interpretation of the Michigan Constitution and the General Property Tax Act. And the way it works is that all sales go into the valuations of all the properties. We don't get the luxury of just appraising the sold properties. That would be fairly easy if all our sales were arm's length and all properties were in the same condition in the neighborhood. And we know that that's not the case. But so the way the system works is that the assessors use the sold properties within an area to value all properties. It is known that the system will inherently have issues with it because the legislature set up a process which is called the board of review, which I'm sure you're all aware of. And that's where local property owners can make challenges to the board of review and have the board and the assessor look at maybe the 3 best comparable sales in the scenario that Commissioner Hoffman mentions. And that's the process that they can go to peers in their community, tell them why their house sold for the 180 in Commissioner Hoffman's example as opposed to the 200,000, and they'd have the authority to make an adjustment to the valuation. If that taxpayer was not happy with what the board review did, they would be able to challenge that further to the Michigan Tax Tribunal, which is a informal hearing by administrative law judge that would hear both sides of the argument from both the taxpayer and the assessor. To the extent they couldn't, they were unable to come to an agreement. And then the process from there would be the taxpayer could go to the Court of Appeals by right. So the process is set up for local communities to be able to value properties in an efficient way, a cost-effective way for property taxes. I would point out that I don't have the numbers in front of me because I don't have that presentation that I was in Novi and subsequent where I went to Lansing on the same issue. But there's less than 0.5% of the parcels that actually make an appearance to the board review. So the notion that Commissioner Hoffman has had over the years that there's an overvaluation of properties, and particularly an overvaluation of properties by Oakland County Equalization, alleging that we're corrupt in public meetings, simply because Commissioner Hoffman has had a challenge to his own, in my opinion, has had a challenge to his own property and has not had didn't receive what he thought was satisfactory treatment by Oakland County Equalization, to the point where we decided not to offer Highland Township an assessing contract any further. So that will conclude my answer and comments. Thank you.
And Dave, let me just conclude by saying, I want you all to know, because Dave Heber worked in the previous administration, and if I had any inclination that Dave Heber wasn't qualified and highly capable of doing his job, he still wouldn't be here. But Dave, I have trust in Dave Heber and the numbers that he are giving us that we're using in our budget, and that's why Dave is still.
Okay, thank you, Dave Heber. I was at that meeting. I spoke after you. That was the exact word you used, so you're not accurate in your memory. But that's all I have to say. And I will bring the board a list of properties that are overassessed, and you draw your own conclusions.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
So, any further question? I think we were just beginning the process. Okay, I got one more person who hasn't spoken yet. Commissioner White, you raise your hand up. I was trying to keep this to 30 minutes, so I'm gonna let Commissioner Kokenderber wrap it up, and then we'll go to let Finance pick it up from here. Commissioner Kokenderber.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'll be quick about it. So, County Executive Coulter, thank you very much for the presentation. I know it's a Herculean task by you and your team. I thought it was well done.
Thanks.
I'm very interested in learning more about avoiding the use of fund balance. I'm sure this answer is in the big budget book that we'll all examine. But just at a 10,000 foot view, could you describe briefly about the particular expenditures that were reduced to get to that result? Is there sort of an outsized expenditure that was reduced, or is a lot of 500 small expenditures that got you to that level for the budget?
That's a great question, and since it's 10,000 feet, I'll take it. We have, it's not unusual for any organization, let alone a governmental unit, make a forecast on expenses and then not quite come in at that for lots of different reasons. And same thing with revenues. But we have developed a habit here of consistently sort of coming in under budget on expenses and over budget on revenue. And at some point, I think it's just good fiscal budgeting practices to try to make that forecast more accurate. If there's one area, and you guys can dig into the details of this in your finance and your budget discussions and all the rest. But I will tell you, if there's one area where on the expense side, it's probably the largest one, if not the largest one, is around personnel costs. Because, as I think you're all aware, we have budgeted for full employment. Well, we know that we have a number of vacancies, and this year in particular, we have a hiring freeze. So not only do we have vacancies, but we have no intention of filling them this year. So it's just simply more accurate to say how many of those positions are going to be filled and at what level, with wiggle room. You never write to the penny. So that's just one example, and I know in the budget hearings you'll hear other ways that that's happened. And don't mishear me. I'm not trying to be critical. I think there's lots of reasons why forecasts don't come in right as forecasted. But ultimately, in the long run, and the Wall Street analysts told us this, if you're doing budgeting right, you should get to a point where your forecasts and your actuals are closely aligned, and that hasn't always been the case. And so we're just going to make an attempt to make that more accurate. Does that answer your question, Commissioner?
It does. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, well, I'm going to give a closing comment before I say something to Commissioner Wyford to close this out from the board. Commissioner Wyford, I know you,
Thanks for a second time, Mr. Chair. So just two comments. I really appreciate the dashboard aspect of following things. You know, Governor Schneider, he was a technocrat. He was a internet whiz, and so that was a great way to do things dashboard wise. And then two, on the Wi-Fi that Mark talked about, and we need the infrastructure. We always had Phil Bertolini, who was always a proponent. The previous administration was always for we need Wi-Fi and internet countywide. So I know that's good progress. And then the question and the education for all the newer commissioners, and Sean, maybe you can. This always came through all the committees, and for all the commissioners to tell their communities that, and they don't know it, about tax anticipation notes. So with the delay in property taxes or some of the communities, and a lot of the communities don't know that the county sells tax anticipation notes so that the municipalities can receive their taxes ahead of time while they're in the collection process. As you know, like I live in South Lyon, and our July tax is not due till October. So a lot of people wait till October to pay that, which is common. So our county, we county commissioners authorize the sale of tax anticipation notes. So we collect the property taxes at the county level, and we give them to the municipalities. So is that in progress as part of this budget? And with COVID causing a problem with tax collection?
I'm going to ask Dave to jump. Dave Heber, you're still on the line.
I am. Phil, are you talking about us selling property? That'd be more of a, if that's what it is, the delinquent taxes, that would be more of a treasurer's question.
No, well, I just, and it can be just general, as part of this, so that the entire county knows, and I don't need a response. Just, and a lot of the commissioners don't know, that we as a county board with our AAA bond rating sell tax anticipation notes so that we can put money available for the cities, villages, and townships. We can give them their money early while we're waiting for the taxes to get paid. The July.
That's correct. That's correct. And I don't know exactly how they do it, if they have to sell notes every year or not, but we do make the communities whole on the taxes. We basically buy their delinquencies from them and then collect the delinquencies. But that's really the county treasurer's function. But at a high level, as I know it, that's correct.
Right. And I believe
I just want everybody to know that the county board has to authorize that, and we do that. So.
And we utilize the tax revolving fund to make sure that all happens. And so thank you, Commissioner Wyford. And thank you everybody for your questions. Thank you, Executive Coulter, for the presentation, the entire executive team and everyone's involved in putting this together as we begin the process. I want to applaud Executive Coulter for being able to demonstrate how we can make increased investments in healthcare, education, workforce development, public safety, do so in a responsible manner to build. We entered COVID on solid financial ground. We're in the midst of it on solid financial ground, and the reforms in this budget that are being proposed ensures that we'll continue to be on that. And so I know the Finance Committee's got their work set out for them to start the budget hearings, and I'm confident that we will develop a 3-year budget, appropriate next year's fiscal spending in late September of this year. So thank you, Executive Coulter. Thank you to the team, and look forward to continue to work with you on this in a collaborative process.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Executive folks can eject themselves, and let's move on to the next stuff. And I think we can move through this pretty quickly. If you refresh your agendas, I think the newest version is the way that we approve the agenda. Just to recap, that there on the regular agenda under the Pandemic Response and Economic Recovery Committee, there are 3 items, and then we'll move to we'll go through the rest of the agenda and then move to the new and miscellaneous business, and we will be knocking out those one at a time as quickly as possible. So there is nothing on the consent agenda, so I'll move us to the regular agenda, and nothing under the Finance and Infrastructure Committee, and nothing under the Health, Safety, and Human Service Committee, and brings us to the Pandemic Response and Economic Recovery. I'm going to call on Commissioner Gershenson to lead us through these 3 items. Commissioner Gershenson, item A. Oh, you're on mute still, Commissioner Gershenson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So on the regular agenda under Pandemic Response and Economic Recovery Committee, item A, Board of Commissioners establishment of the Oakland County Senior Centers Grant Program.
Commissioner Gershenson
Can I
moves
get
the
a
report.
motion?
Moves the report, seconded by Commissioner Nelson. All in favor of receiving the report, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Let the record reflect the reports received unanimously. And Commissioner Nelson moves the resolution, seconded by Commissioner Gershenson. This is miscellaneous resolution 20247, the establishment of the Oakland County Senior Center Grant Program. I believe we have an amendment. Commissioner Spiz.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I do have an amendment. It's on page 5 of your latest package. And it's something we discussed in committee briefly, but I do have some verbiage that's out there for everybody to consider. And what I wanted to make sure by these amendments is I didn't want to put a minimum on the number. So instead of saying up to anywhere, we modified that wording a little bit. So we say we recommend that a minimum of $2 million be put aside for the senior centers. And then I believe there was another line item that indicated up to $50,000 for each senior center. And we modified that slightly to allow the discretion of the oversight committee to allow for those numbers, which is consistent with what the oversight committee has been doing with everything else.
Commissioner Spiz moves that resolution, seconded by Commissioner Nelson. And I would say, I guess that was part of the conversation. I don't know if I think that we're in alignment on that. If everyone's okay with that, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll on that amendment?
Yes, on the amendment, Commissioners Hoffman,
Yes.
Jackson,
Yes.
Kokendorfer,
Yes.
Kowal,
Yes.
Kuhn,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
Lubes,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
McGilvray,
Yes.
Middleton,
I think we lost him.
Middleton. Okay. Miller,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Howell,
We thank you, Lord, for the sisterhood of Alpha, Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated.
Commissioner Powell, are you voting?
I say
I heard
yes.
you.
did she respond?
Yes. Yeah, hear
Okay.
me? Yes.
Yeah, now I can, thank you.
Thank you.
Irene.
Quarles,
Yes.
Biz,
Yes.
Cobb,
Yes.
Weipert,
Yes.
Woodward,
Yes.
Zach,
Yes.
Gershenson.
Yes.
Okay, and Gingell did not join the meeting, correct? And did we get Middleton back? No? Okay, well, then, Mr. Chair, you have 19 yeas, 0 nays.
A sufficient number voting in the affirmative, the amendment is adopted. That brings us on to the main motion. Any further discussion? Commissioner Kowal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've had some of my senior directors asking me perhaps if there's any kind of an idea of a timeline there when grant applications would be go out, when they'd be due. So I guess if somebody has that information handy right now, that'd be great. If not, I can always inquire tomorrow or the next day. Thank you.
I would just say, Commissioner Cole, up to that point, is that one of the reasons I wanted to get this adopted on this meeting. I wasn't planning on having many items on this meeting, but I wanted to get that ball moving because I've had the same question that's actually come forward. And so by approving this, the Oversight Committee for the Local Government Partnership grant, that Commissioner Spiz, Commissioner Markham, Commissioner, I think Lubes, and Commissioner
Coon.
Are part of, can take action sooner rather than later to get those applications out so we can get those monies out to those senior centers. Great. Thank you. Commissioner Wiper.
And just so everybody knows, this is a great thing for senior centers, and they're kind of in a slow time where they've been some of the senior centers are in schools where they've been closed. And I talked to the Milford Senior Center, and to my surprise, I told them it's coming, and the director told me they would like touchless water faucets. And I told the director, I said, think about what COVID is doing and what's it going to do for the future. And those are the kind of things, because it's COVID expenses, but not touching everything, not having hand sanitizer. Those are the kind of expenses, and they should Google it. They should email each other and think of the type of expenses. And those kind of things wouldn't be that expensive. A few $100s for a faucet, a touchless faucet, things like that would be proper expenses. Talk to the other senior centers. So this is a great thing for our seniors. $50,000 can make a senior center way functional, and it's a great thing coming. So, and I know we talked about there's 60 so senior centers and 50,000 or so is appropriate. So I appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Wiper. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll on the resolution.
On the resolution, Commissioners Jackson,
Commissioner Jackson. Oh, when we move on, come back to her.
okay. Kokendorfer,
Wait,
Jackson.
Commissioner Jackson's back.
No.
Right.
Jackson?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Kokendorfer,
Yes.
Cole,
Yes.
Kuhn,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
Lubes,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
McGilvray,
Yes.
and Middleton did not come back. Okay. Miller,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Powell,
For Carolyn G. Randolph.
Yes.
4,000.
Corals,
Yes.
Is,
Yes.
Todd,
Yes.
Wiper,
Yes, but I think I most spoke to 40 senior centers.
Woodward,
Yes.
Zach,
Yes.
Gershenson,
Yes.
Hoffman.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 19 yeas, 0 nays.
A sufficient number voting in the affirmative, the resolution is adopted. I want to apologize, everyone. I skipped over a very important part of our meeting. We had a lengthy presentation, longer than general, and I skipped over public comment. So I need to suspend action on the regular agenda and come back to public comment. I've teed up our staff, Andrea Powers, who's in the auditorium ready. Is there anyone on the public line for public comment? And I apologize to those who had to go through that first item. Skipped over that. So it's open the floor to public comment. Anyone on the call or anyone who submitted an email, public comment, please come and address the board for up to 3 minutes.
We currently have just one caller on the line, so we can open it up to them to speak. Caller 1, would you like to speak in public comment? They've held on pretty much the whole time, so.
Right.
Can you hear?
Yep. No, thank you.
Okay, they've declined, and there are no, currently there's no online submissions.
All right. Well, thank you. Well, let the record reflect that we welcome the entire public to participate in our meetings at any time, and we will make time for everyone to address this board. Seeing no further public comment, I'll declare public comment closed, and that will bring us back to the regular agenda. And we are under the Pandemic Response and Economic Recovery Committee, and I will yield the floor to Commissioner Gershenson to take up item B.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'd like to introduce miscellaneous resolution 20248, authorizing funding from the CARES Act, coronavirus relief funds for distribution of public information with COVID-19 resources for seniors.
Commissioner Gershenson moves the reports, seconded by Commissioner Nelson. All in favor of receiving the report, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Let the record reflect that the report is received unanimously. Let a motion by Commissioner Nelson, seconded by Commissioner McGilvery, to move the resolution. Any discussion? Commissioner Kuhn.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move the same amendment that I did in pandemic response. It's found on page 8 of the most recent, or what I think is the most recent packet, which is 184 pages.
Mm-hmm. Commissioner Kuhn moves that amendment. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Hoffman. Any discussion on the amendment? I'll speak to the amendment. I believe this is, we discussed this in committee. I don't believe this amendment is necessary. Particularly, partisan mailings are illegal. But I actually do believe, I think the comments that came in committee, I think it's important that our public knows who their county commissioners are so they can reach out for local communities. I think Commissioner Nelson made that point very clear. And so I'll be voting no on the amendment. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll on the amendment.
On the amendment, Commissioners Kokendorfer,
Yes.
Howell,
No.
Kuhn,
Yes.
Long,
No.
Loops,
No.
Markham,
No.
McGilvery,
No.
Middleton, oh, sorry,
Thank you.
Miller,
No.
Nelson,
No.
Howell,
No.
Quarles,
No.
Biz,
Yes.
Taub,
Yes.
Wypert,
Yes.
Woodward,
No.
Zach,
No.
Gershenson,
No.
Hoffman,
Yes.
Jackson,
No.
Mr. Chair, you have 6 yeas, 13 nays.
An insufficient number voting in the affirmative, the amendment fails. It brings it back to the main motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll on the resolution.
On the resolution, Commissioners Kowal,
Yes.
Kuhn,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
Lubes,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
McGilvery,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Howell,
Yes.
Quarles,
Yes.
Spiz,
Yes.
Chubb,
Yes.
Wypert,
Yes.
Woodward,
Yes.
Zach,
Yes.
Gershenson,
Yes.
Hoffman,
Yes.
Jackson,
Yes.
Kokendorfer.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 19 yeas, 0 nays.
Sufficient number voting in the affirmative, the resolution is adopted. Brings us to item C on the Pandemic Response and Economic Recovery Committee. Commissioner Gershenson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Board of Commissioners to establish Protect Democracy Election Worker Recruitment and Retention Program within the Oakland Together Local Government Partnership Grant. No, you're on mute, Dave.
Commissioner Gershenson moves the report, seconded by Commissioner Weipert. All in favor of receiving the report, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. The report is received unanimously. Moved by Commissioner Gershenson, seconded by Commissioner Weipert to move the resolution. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
The resolution, Commissioners Kuhn,
Yes, yes.
Long,
Yes.
Lubes,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
McGilvray,
Yes.
Middleton. Oh, sorry. Miller,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Howell,
Yes.
Quarles,
Yes.
Biz,
Yes.
Cobb.
Yes.
It was a yes, Chubb?
Yes.
Just got the, okay. It was so quiet. Weipert,
Yes.
Woodward,
Yes.
Zach,
Yes.
Gershenson,
Yes.
Hoffman,
Yes.
Jackson,
Yes.
Okendorfer,
Yes.
Kowal.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 19 yeas and 0 nays.
Sufficient number voting in the affirmative, the resolution is adopted. Those are the only items on the regular agenda. That brings us the reports of special committees. There are none. That brings us to special order of business. Under item A, Commissioner Taub.
Yes, I would like to postpone all of my, excuse me, discharges.
Yeah.
However, I would like to add another discharge. Please.
Okay. Okay. I'll come back to you, Commissioner Taub. Let me say get through these, and I'll come right back to you. So
Thank you.
Commissioner Taub gives notice to give notice to discharge items A, item D, item E under special order of business. Done so without objection. Commissioner Kowal.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I also give notice to, for the next meeting, motion to discharge MR 20139.
Done so without objection. Commissioner Kokendorfer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd also like to move mine to the next meeting, 20173.
Done so without objection. And Commissioner Taub, back to you.
Oh, okay, thank you. On June 4th, I introduced the following resolution, MR 20197, facilitation of a plan to provide broadband internet access to the school children of Oakland County impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm asking to discharge the committee, Mr. Chair. However, I would also be more than happy to amend this resolution so that we include everybody, because broadband is desperately needed, as was mentioned by one of our commissioners, Commissioner Markham, as I recall, not too long ago in this meeting.
I'll give give notice of discharge, and
Yes,
we'll
sir.
put it on the list. And then my guess is that would also be part of a conversation coming up very quickly as well. So no problem. Okay, that I think that covers all that. Brings us to unfinished business under item 12. There is none, and brings us to item 13. Under proposed resolutions of introduction, we've got a number, as per communication and how we've handled this before, when interlocal agreements with cities, villages, and townships come forward as part of the local government partnership program. We've just asked them to be brought forward and they can be introduced. And the plan of suspending the rules, assuming that they've been approved by the oversight committee, which all the ones on the agenda today have been. So we're going to start with item A. This is Board of Commissioners approval of interlocal agreement. And so who wants to take it? Commissioner Kokendorfer, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move to suspend the rules for approval of the interlocal agreement with the City of Rochester for the distribution of CARES Act funding.
Moved by Commissioner Kokendorfer to suspend the rules, seconded by Commissioner Spiz. All in favor of suspending the rules, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The rules are suspended. That brings us to the main motion. Moved by Commissioner Kokendorfer, seconded by Commissioner Spiz. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
On the resolution, Commissioners Long,
Yes.
Lubes,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
McGilvray,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Howell,
Yes.
Quarles,
Yes.
Spiz,
Yes, and Middleton's back on.
Cobb,
Yes.
You hear me now?
We can hear you,
Yes.
Commissioner Middleton. We're calling the roll on the vote to approve the interlocal agreement with Rochester, the City of Rochester.
I voted yes. You can't hear me?
Yep, I got you, Middleton,
We
yes.
can hear you.
thank
We got you.
Okay, Wipert,
Yes.
Woodward,
Yes.
Zach,
Yes.
Gershenson,
Yes.
Hoffman,
Yes.
Jackson,
Yes.
Kokendorfer,
Yes.
Kowal,
Yes.
Kuhn.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 20 yeas, 0 nays.
A sufficient number voting in the affirmative, the resolution is adopted. That brings us to the next one. This Commissioner Hoffman or Spiz, Commissioner Spiz's district. So you're testing my geographic knowledge. Commissioner
Yes.
Spiz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to introduce miscellaneous resolution for the approval of the interlocal agreement with Addison Township for distribution of CARES Act funding and a request suspension of the rules.
Commissioner Spiz requests suspension of the rules, seconded by Commissioner Long. All in favor of suspending the rules, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The rules are suspended. Commissioner Spiz moves the resolution, seconded by Commissioner Long. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
On the resolution, Commissioners Lubes,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
McGilvray,
Yes.
Middleton,
Yes. Yes.
Miller. I got you.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Howell,
Yes.
Quarles,
Yes.
Spiz,
Yes.
Taub,
Yes.
Wipert,
Yes.
Woodward,
Yes.
Zach,
Yes.
Gershenson,
Yes.
Hoffman,
Yes.
Jackson,
Yes.
Kokendorfer,
Yes.
Kowal,
Yes.
Kuhn,
Yes.
Long.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 20 yeas, 0 nays.
Sufficient number voting in the affirmative, the resolution is adopted. That brings us to item C. Commissioner Spiz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to introduce miscellaneous resolution for the approval of interlocal agreement with the Charter Township of Orion for distribution of CARES Act funding and I request suspension of the rules.
Commissioner Spiz moves to suspend the rules, seconded by Commissioner Wiper. All in favor of suspending the rules, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The rules are suspended. Commissioner Spiz moves the resolution, seconded by Commissioner Wipert. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
On the resolution, Commissioners Markham,
Yes.
McGilvery,
Yes.
Middleton,
Yes. Yes.
Miller?
You can't hear
Yes.
me?
Yes, I got you, Middleton. Thank you. You're a yes. Gotcha. Sorry, Miller?
Yes.
Thank you. Nelson,
Yes.
Howell,
Yes.
Quarles,
Yes.
Biz,
Yes.
Todd,
Yes.
Wipert,
Yes.
Woodward,
Yes.
Zach,
Yes.
Kirshenson,
Yes.
Hoffman,
Yes.
Jackson,
Yes.
Kokendorfer,
Yes.
Bowall,
Yes.
Kuhn,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
Loops.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Chair, we have 20 yeas, 0 nays.
A sufficient number voting in the affirmative, the resolution is adopted. That brings us to item D. Commissioner Top. You have it in front of you?
Okay. Yes, I do. I'd like to introduce the.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Item D. Item D is not yours. I'm sorry. You're item E. I apologize. I jumped too far.
Okay.
Commissioner Spiz.
Thank you
Item
very
D.
much. I was on a roll, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it.
I know. I'm sorry.
I'd like to introduce miscellaneous resolution for the approval of interlocal agreement with the Charter Township of Oakland, distribution of CARES Act funding, and I request suspension of the rules.
Commissioner Spiz moves to suspend the rules, seconded by Commissioner Wipert. All in favor of suspending the rules, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. The rules are suspended. Commissioner Spiz moves the resolution, seconded by Commissioner Hoffman. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Discussion?
Oh, discussion. Yes, discussion on this item. Commissioner Wipert.
And just for everybody who's watching the world now, all these last resolutions have been, we as commissioners have approved $30 million for our CVTs, city, villages, and townships. And all these little interlocal agreements are part of providing CARES funds, COVID relief process for all our cities, villages, and townships. And the application process is open for the next month or two. And we want our cities, villages, and townships to apply for, and that's what we are processing right now. So that's why they're usually unanimous. And I wish everybody would apply because we want to help all our cities, villages, and townships get through this. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Wipert, for that public announcement for those who are watching at home, explaining what we're doing. So thank you very much. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Madam Clerk, please call the roll on the resolution.
On the resolution, Commissioners McGilvery,
Yes.
Middleton,
Yes. Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Howell,
Yes.
Quarles,
Yes.
Biz,
Yes.
Todd,
Yes.
Wipert,
Yes.
Woodward,
Yes.
Zach,
Yes.
Kirshenson,
Yes.
Hoffman,
Yes.
Jackson, Jackson. Come back to her. Kokendorfer,
Yes. Yes.
I think Jackson just yelled yes, right?
She'll be back.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, Kokendorfer, you said yes, yes?
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson, votes yes, right? Commissioner Jackson on the resolution?
Yes.
Yeah, she said yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Okay. Kokendorfer, you said yes, yes?
I did, yes.
Thank you. Just trying to keep it in order here. Cowell,
Yeah, can I vote now?
Yes,
I vote
please.
yes. I vote yes.
Kuhn,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
Lubes,
Yes.
Markham.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 20 yeas, 0 nays.
Sufficient number voting in the affirmative. The resolution is adopted. Now it brings us to item E. Commissioner Taub.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, on behalf of myself and Commissioner Gershenson, I would like to introduce a resolution for the approval of an interlocal agreement with Bloomfield Township for distribution of CARES Act funding, and I'd like to move the resolution.
Commissioner Taub, I'll ask for a suspension of the rules and move the resolution. Moved by Commissioner Taub, seconded by Commissioner Gershenson. All in favor of suspending the rules, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. The rules are suspended. Commissioner Taub moves the resolution, seconded by Commissioner Gershenson. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
On the resolution, Commissioners Middleton,
Yes. Yes.
Gotcha. Miller,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Powell, Commissioner Powell, Did you just
Pass.
respond?
She passed.
You passed? Okay. Thank you. I will come back. Quarles,
Yes.
Fizz,
Yes.
Chaub,
Yes.
Wypert,
Yes.
Woodward,
Yes.
Zach,
Yes.
Gershenson,
Yes.
Hoffman,
Yes.
Jackson,
Yes.
Kokendorfer,
Yes.
Kowal,
Yes.
Kuhn,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
Lubes,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
McGilvray,
Yes.
Powell.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 20 yeas, 0 nays.
Sufficient number voting in the affirmative. The resolution is adopted. Moves us on to the next item. Commissioner Markham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to move the resolution for approval of the interlocal agreement with the city of Novi for distribution of the CARES Act funding. And I would like to move for suspension of the rules. I would like to make one point, and that is this is the second submission for Novi. And it's an example that we want communities to keep submitting as many times as they want to, as they accrue further expenses. So,
Thank
yes.
you, Commissioner Markham. Good reminder. Commissioner Markham moves to suspend the rules, seconded by Commissioner Wypert. All in favor of suspending the rules, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. The rules are suspended. Commissioner Markham moves the resolution, seconded by Commissioner Wypert. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
On the resolution, Commissioners Miller,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Quarles,
Yes.
Fizz,
Yes.
Cobb,
Yes.
Wypert,
Yes.
Woodward,
Yes.
Zach,
Yes.
Gershenson,
Yes.
Hoffman,
Yes.
Jackson, I think she froze. Commissioner Jackson, I think you froze.
I think she froze.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. There you are.
Yes.
Gotcha. Thank you. Kokendorfer,
Yes.
Rowell,
Yes.
Kuhn,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
Lubes,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
McGilvray,
Yes.
Middleton,
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 20 yeas, 0 nays.
Sufficient number voting in the affirmative, the resolution is adopted. And the next few are introductions to committees, so I'll recognize, coming to item G, I'll recognize Commissioner Commissioner Quarles.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to introduce miscellaneous resolutions for the creation of the Oakland County Together absentee ballot program for all Oakland County voters. And would like to have it
And refer to the Pandemic Response and Economic Recovery Committee without objection.
Yes.
All right, brings us to item H. I believe Commissioner Powell, are you on? Calling Commissioner Gershenson to introduce the resolution to authorize the grant funding to implement the Vocera touchless communication system to protect healthcare providers and patients at McLaren Oakland facility, and refer that to what is being referred to health? I do not know.
For pandemic?
The plan was pandemic.
Yeah, yep, referred to pandemic, because it's using CARES dollars. So refer to pandemic response and economic recovery without objection. And that moves us to the next one. And what is the next one? Sorry, link didn't work here.
Water filling.
Yeah, water filling. Commissioner I, Commissioner Miller. Oh, are you there? That's item I under new miscellaneous business. Yep.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to introduce miscellaneous resolution for the commissioners to consider the water bottle filling stations from County CARES Act Coronavirus Relief Fund grant. Refer that to
pandemic recovery and pandemic response and economic recovery, referred to without objection. Brings us to J. Commissioner Miller?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, on behalf of myself and Commissioner Spiz, I'd like to introduce miscellaneous resolution. Board of Commissioners amend of Oakland County Together local government partnership program policies to include the Road Commission for Oakland County as a qualified local unit of government referred to Pandemic Response and Economic Recovery Committee.
Referred to without objection.
Thank you.
Brings us to the next one, Commissioner Lubes.
Well, let me find the agenda.
All right. How about this? I'll read it for you. I think Commissioner
Perfect.
Lubes and myself are going to introduce the Oakland Together Safe for School hotline in partnership with Beaumont Health. And we'll refer that to pandemic response and economic recovery without objection.
Thank you. I so move.
All right. Beautiful. Okay. Are there any other resolutions? Commissioner Hoffman.
I don't have a resolution. I just want to wish Commissioner Taub a happy birthday.
Well, I was going to get to announcements. That was the next thing. Commissioner Taub had a
Happy birthday.
had a birthday yesterday. So happy birthday, Commissioner Taub.
Happy birthday.
Now we can
Happy
do like
birthday,
the
Joel.
symphony and we could all start singing like in
No, don't
sequence.
do that.
All right.
Thank you.
Happy
Thank
birthday.
you, Commissioner Hoffman. I have one thing I'd like to say,
Yep.
Mr. Chair.
Mhm.
I'm kind of disappointed in a response that I heard from a question that a commissioner asked of a staff member in the executive office building. I'm not going to go into it, but I don't think that talking about commissioners is acceptable. If you have something to, if you want to answer the question, answer the question. If you're answering it about berating another commissioner, to me is unconscionable. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I'm gonna say happy birthday, Commissioner Taub, once more.
May I say one other thing? Yeah.
All right.
You know
Okay,
what?
one last thing before we adjourn. You
I was
stand between us and adjourning, Commissioner Taub.
Okay, I like the presentation in the commissioner's auditorium. I thought that was very good. But guess what? They forgot to put our seal on the wall, or it was taken down. Nobody knew where it was. And I thought that would be very nice to have our seal showing either on the podium or on the wall behind the speakers. Thank you,
Or
Mr. Chair.
cardboard cutouts of all the commissioners would have been a nice addition too.
Yeah, I know it. Commissioner Spiz are going to put the resolution to appropriate funding to cardboard cutouts so that we can virtually be there in some sort of representative fashion. But yes,
Good
duly
idea.
noted.
3D,
Good idea.
3D cutouts.
You want 3D cutouts? All right, now you want to spend
Yeah.
some money. All right.
I
thank
want
you,
mine to be tall. I want to be tall.
everybody. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everybody.
A little decorum.
Pardon? Oh, okay. So, okay. Any further announcements? Seeing none, we adjourn to July 23rd at 5 p.m. or call the chair. Good night, everyone. Be